Okay, welcome. This is Pesci's Recovery Corner. We are a recovery podcast. We have special guests to come on and talk about their recovery from all different walks of life or all different types of addictions or alcoholism or mental health. Today we have a very special guest. He's a friend of mine named Mike Bradshaw. Mike actually works at a place called LifeSync. It's in Malibu. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I think that Mike and I have ran in the same recovery circles in LA for a bunch of years. But I met him and got to know him more a few years back when I went to LifeSync to at a it was like a little open house or something like that. But I remember just meeting him and just really vibing with him. Mike, welcome to the corner.
Thank you.
Nice to have you on today. So usually we like to delve into your past, see where you were born, see where you were raised, talk about what you got into as far as drugs or alcohol or both, and then we can get into the recovery portion and also your professional background. So tell us, who is Mike?
Oh, Mike. I was born in Panama City and raised in Simi Valley, California, which we'll end up on later. That's where I ended up full circle. Normal kid. Grew up in Simi Valley, late 70s, early 80s. My childhood memories are walking to and from school, playing in the neighborhood, playing in the streets. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Pretty good childhood. Had both parents. My dad left when I was around 8 or 9. Things changed a little bit, but not a whole bunch. My mom did a really good job of keeping things pretty normal. There were a couple of times in my early teens, I think, where we had to move in with my grandma a couple of times, but still nice, supportive family. Nothing seemed horrible. It was a good childhood. Entered Lawrence Junior High School in 7th grade. Good student, really good student, surfer dude, skater kid. Then something happened. I like to blame it on Robert Smith because I started listening to The Cure and shit just went downhill from there, dude.
But the Cure is awesome, man.
I know. I know. It's I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the Black Clothes, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say 1,000 things. Blame it on the kids that I was hanging out from LA and Hollywood. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Not a big fan of pot, but smoked it a couple of times. Alcohol was definitely my thing, and whatever came along with it. Yeah, some coke here, some meth here and there in my teens. A lot of acid in my senior year, but always alcohol. That was always it.
How old were you when you first started drinking?
Oh man, my first memory of actually drinking was with my buddy Jonas, and I don't think he'll see this, but if he does, it'll be kind of funny. We dipped into his parents went to the movies, and we thought we have about 2 hours to drink, and we were probably 11, man. We have 2 hours to drink, so we had a bottle of Seagram 7 and a bottle of tequila, and we just passed them back and forth. And really all I remember that night was his mom just watching over us as we both puked all over the floor. That was the first time I remember actually drinking and getting drunk, but I'd say I started drinking around 13.
Okay. So what, his mom, you guys got into her liquor or their liquor, and then she came home and saw you guys trashed and kind of just watched?
Yeah. Just kind of made sure we didn't die.
Okay. And as far as like your first recollection of alcohol, was it too strong, or did you like it immediately, or did you think this I don't like this, but I'm going to keep doing it because because you love the effect?
I said I'm never going to do this again.
And then how soon after?
It was probably a year and a half.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and I don't remember that. I don't remember the actual event. I mean, all of my friends, it was Old English was a big thing at the time. We all had 40s of Old E at every weekend party, and that I think actually now that I'm thinking about it, this is going to happen a lot, man. My memory is a little trashed. 8th grade is when I remember actually actively trying to find ways to leave school and drink. So fairly young, I was looking for ways to drink rather than do something productive.
Cut in class in the 8th grade.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So were the grades dropping? Were you not doing well anymore in
Yeah,
school?
grades started to drop at the end of 8th grade. Um, I mean, I'll put it to you this way: I took pre-algebra in 7th grade because I was on a track to be a pretty decent student. I also took pre-algebra in 12th grade. That's kind of how it went.
Right.
So I started out really strong and ended in the same place, which was strong for a 7th grader.
Now, did you have any siblings or anything like that that were growing up like with you?
Yeah, 2 older sisters. One of them is, last time I checked, active alcoholic. My armchair psychological guess would be bipolar 1, maybe 2, self-medicating.
Mhm.
Very successful for most of her life and just drank herself into a bad place. I haven't talked to her or heard from her really in a few years. My other older sister, she's successful, lives up in Ridgecrest, far from an alcoholic, but
Right.
really, really love to get married to him. So take what you want out of that one. My
Right.
dad was definitely an alcoholic. My mom, not so much. My mom's the one that will drink a half a glass of wine and say, "I need to stop. This is
Right.
working." Yeah,
I understand that. Okay, so there may be an alcoholic gene within your family system. May or may not. We don't really know.
bro. If you dug into my cousins, you would know that there definitely is.
Okay, okay. So there's some genetics there. All
Oh
right.
yeah,
So like between 8th and 12th grade, it was pretty much just party time, like school was kind of on the back burner, or you were still making it to school, but drinking was essential, like you guys were partying a lot, obviously. I imagine it was like high school partying, like going, you know, to whether you're cutting class or the weekend's coming, so and so's parents out of the town are out of town, so you go party and kegger parties and things like that.
yeah, more or less. But I think the big difference for me was Mike's going to be here. Something stupid's going to happen. I was the guy that made stupid things happen.
Like belligerent.
Yeah, I mean, it was either a fight, running around naked, just, I mean, you name it. I kind of drank myself to the point where I didn't want to quit drinking anymore and just wanted to raise hell.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. And so, did you start pushing your friends away, or did you
I
have
don't,
friends that drank with you and they liked drinking with you because you guys were just a bunch of drinkers?
just a bunch of drinkers. I had plenty of lower companions.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a trip to look back and think about the people that were lower companions, and then to think, oh, you know what? Actually, I was a lower companion too.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. When I got sober, I started reconnecting with all of my friends, and I was like, wow, these guys were all really successful, and I'm just starting over at 34. So it is kind of funny. I was definitely the lower companion.
Okay, so did you finish high school on time?
Barely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
I didn't walk. I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't want to be a part of any of the traditional stuff. I just wanted to get out of high school.
right, and then when you got out of high school, what'd you do?
Boo. Decided it would be a good idea to move to Nevada.
And what'd you do there?
Man,
You
a
went to
lot of
Reno, right?
yeah, I was south of Reno in a little place called I started out in Minden. It was a little tiny town. It's not quite that small anymore. And then ended up in Carson City and kind of bounced around, ended up in Dayton. But it was all south of Reno.
Carson City
Uh
is what, the capital of Nevada, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what did I do there? I did nothing good. I went to work for a it's an ice cream company, number one, but they do like home delivery in rural areas for frozen food, like gourmet frozen food. And I was a warehouse manager and worked overnights. And got off work and went to. Once I found out that you could drink 24 hours a day and there was some aid to help you with that you could find on the streets, it was just kind of on from there. That was really it.
So does that mean if you were working overnights, does that mean you were drinking at work or just drinking when you got off work or all the time?
Most of the time when I got off of work, I wasn't quite 24 hours a day at that point. But by 7:30 in the morning, I was either sitting on the river drinking beer or sitting in a casino or a bar drinking beer. Um, And that was at 18 years old. I got a fake ID shortly after I moved there.
Were you a gambler?
I thought I was for a little while.
Right.
Um, and no, I was the guy that would get $20 in nickels and sit at the nickel video poker machine just to get free drinks.
And that's usually what they do. The more
Yeah.
you gamble, the more they bring you the drinks.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did you last in Nevada?
It's really, really, really hard to pin down 3 or 4 years, at most. I went there, I didn't tell anybody, I didn't tell my mom, my sister, resentment that I'm still trying to work through. Had the sheriffs come look for me and find me, did a social call. I mean, I was running from something, I just didn't know it at the time. Later on, after I got into my step work, it was easy to figure out, but, I was there for a few years, got tired of the snow, came back to, kind of be with my mom a little bit. My stepdad was sick and dying, and it wasn't much help when I got back either, but I thought I was.
Did you go live back with your mom when you came back to
Yeah,
California?
yeah.
And then, so you couldn't be of good help to her or him because you were inebriated, you were drunk a lot, or what?
I was just never home.
Oh, you just
I was pretty much drunk anytime after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I just wasn't around. I came home and just started partying with the same old friends again.
and at this time you were what, in your 20s, mid 20s,
Early, very early 20s, 20,
early
21, 22.
20s. Okay, and then what?
Well, started hanging out with the same friends. There was a period there right after I got back when I dipped into meth a little bit, hung
Hmm.
out with some of my, more biker leaning friends.
Uh-huh.
Dipped into meth, tried to figure life out, met a girl, thought I should start figuring my life out, got a somewhat normal job, went back to school for a systems engineering thing with Microsoft, started doing that for a little bit. Um, and then fell into actually, I'm leaving about 3 years of my life out. I went to work at a hospital,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, and worked my way up into a director position at a hospital. And this is actually important because I was actually asked to resign because of my drinking. Um,
How long did you work in that hospital until that happened?
about 3 years, and it wasn't until I held it I worked shifts for about 2 years, so I could plan my drinking, and I wasn't really showing up for work under the influence or reeking of booze. But
Mhm.
once I got into a director role, I was a salaried position, and I thought I was king of the world being a hospital director in my early 20s, so I was partying all night and showing up stinking drunk every morning.
Like they could smell the alcohol in your breath?
That's how it ended up. This is a funny story. It's also an embarrassing story. I oversaw the security department, and one morning I was there, and I remember it was the anniversary. I think it was actually the day of 9/11. Somebody had broken into the radiology department, so I helped, chase this person down, tackled her, got her handcuffed, and when the cops showed up and I was giving them custody of her, they actually charged her with public intoxication because of my breath. And my employees whisked me away immediately. They were like, "Bro, you gotta go. You stink."
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah, yeah, that was that's a fun amendment to try to make because I could never find that person.
That's the thing I was thinking right now is I wonder if you made amends to her.
Uh, I wish I could. I wish
Yeah.
I could. There'd be no way for me to even get her name or anything. I didn't get sober for at least another 10 years.
Right, right.
I mean, she was doing bad things anyway, but she definitely got the charges she was supposed to. But that public intoxication charge was certainly mine.
That was your fault. Okay. Now, after you got canned from the hospital, what'd you go on and do?
That's when I ended up working for a call center and doing the Microsoft engineering thing, and I kind of fell into uh, funny, the guy that called you because he saw that I was going to be on your show and left you that voicemail, John Coffey.
Mhm.
I spoke to him before I came on the show, and he was a guy that I worked with. We worked for IBM at Anthem and WellPoint. Uh, it's funny when he was talking to me just now. He said, "Man, I never knew you had a problem. Congratulations." And I'm thinking, I used to run over to El Torito every single day at lunch, and I would put back a couple of shots, and I'd come back in, and we'd sit in our basement cubicles and just go back to work. And so that's what I was doing. It was ACF2 mainframe work. And towards the end of that, John's actually a part of this part of the story too. Towards the end of that, we were all working from home, and that was not good for me at all, man.
No.
I remember I don't remember if I resigned or got fired or if it was a mutual thing, right? But right before I was going into rehab, but I had a bunch of IBM equipment, and this guy John is like banging on my windows, and I'm just sitting there in my underwear, snot flinging drunk at 8 in the morning, and he's trying to help me out because he heard they were mad at me. And that guy was actually in my story for quite some time, and he had no idea that I was an alcoholic, and that's kind of terrifying. I was that good. I was that good, man.
I understand the double life, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the double and triple life, or even more.
Yeah.
So, how long did you last at IBM, and then what happened? Like, I mean, what happened? Did you work there a long time?
I was there for quite a few years because before it was IBM, it was just WellPoint. I was with WellPoint for a couple of years, so 4 or 5 years, somewhere around there.
And what was this, in Simi Valley, or where was it?
It was in Woodland Hills.
Woodland Hills, okay.
Yeah.
And then, did you get fired from that job, or did you just leave, or what happened?
I think it was a combination of both. I think it was a mutual understanding. I just kind of quit going to work, and
They're just like, this ain't working out.
yeah, pretty much. I'm trying to put it all together. That was really, really foggy at the end. I ended up going back for a short time after that. But that was right before I went to treatment.
So treatment was, how old were you? 34?
I was 34, yeah.
And had you ever been to any treatment or outpatient before that?
I had no idea what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I was raised that Alcoholics Anonymous was for drunks, and that was not me.
So you thought.
Right.
And then what made you go to treatment? Was there some kind of crisis moment, or did something bring you to treatment for a reason, or did somebody push you there?
All of the above. What it came down to, and this is where the spirituality in my life begins. It's also where the problems in my life began.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything was fine until I quit drinking, or so I thought. I had it, you can call it burning bush, bright light experience, whatever it was. I mean, I was literally drinking 24 hours a day. Couldn't go 2 hours without a drink. Otherwise I'd start shaking, dry heaving, the whole nine.
Beer or heavy stuff?
Yeah, by that point I was drinking bottom shelf pop off vodka out of the plastic pints.
Okay.
At least 5 a day. Sleep for a couple hours, wake up, take a few drinks, throw up, go back to sleep, kind of a thing. And I just decided I was going to quit drinking. I was done. I'd had it. I was going to put my life back together. Didn't think to Google detox or anything like that. I remember saying to myself, I think I'm just going to piss and shit on myself for the weekend, and then I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up in a full psychosis, Northridge Hospital trauma unit. My heart stopped 3 times. I had organ failure. I remember I had to call my mom for help, and I called her, but I was still refusing to go get medical care. I thought I was just going to get through it, and I wasn't picking up the psychosis piece of the whole thing. But I was running into the corner of her apartment and standing in the corner going, I can hear my iTunes better here. The reception's better here. I mean, I was not in good shape.
Right.
And she tried to convince me for a few hours, and I finally said, okay, let's go. And we happened to end up at the hospital that I worked at, which was fun.
Wow.
So yeah, I walked into the waiting room, and the charge nurse, who I knew, and she's just an angel, and I'll say her name in case this ever gets back to her. Her name is Charmaine. She's an absolute angel. She walked up to me and she said, who are you bringing in? And I said, me. And she asked me what was going on, and she took me right back. And the doctor that literally saved my life, his name was Dr. Mack at Northridge Hospital. I remember him asking me 3 things. He said, how much do you drink, for how long, and when was your last drink? And when I answered those 3 questions, he walked over, picked up a phone on the wall, and that's really all I remember. From what I'm told, I was chemically induced into a coma because I was in full organ failure. Couple of blips that I remember along the way. I remember going up in the trauma elevator up to ICU and just kind of going, I have a defibrillator on my chest. I have a defibrillator on my chest. I mean, I was dying, dude. Multiple times I died between the emergency room and ICU. And that's where it started.
And to think that you thought Alcoholics Anonymous was for drunks.
Right. Which wasn't me. I didn't have a problem. None.
Any cirrhosis or
No.
no? Okay, good.
Nope.
So being in that hospital, how long were you hospitalized, at least in the detoxification era?
I think I was in ICU for about 3 days. I would honestly have to ask my mom or my family. I don't remember. The only thing that I really remember is the end of my hospital stay and telling myself, once I can get my IV pulled to the smoking section on my own, I'm going to leave and go drink. That's really all I remember.
Isn't that baffling that
Dude.
addicts and alcoholics, we'll go get hospitalized knowing we need to get detoxified. We got to go through detox and get the substance out of us, and how the it centers in our mind. The alcoholism centers in our mind to where it's cunning, baffling, and powerful to the point where we think like, yeah, I'm cleaned up, but like I got to go do some more drinking. Like that's all there is to it, or using for that matter. As we
It's bizarre, man, and it was really tricky because I actually believed that all of that happened because I quit drinking, which was true. I was in the hospital from detoxing. I was in a hospital because I got sick because my body didn't have alcohol, but I didn't see that as the problem. I saw the problem that my body didn't have alcohol. That was the problem.
Right. And I think that's one of the key things for us that are alcoholics or addicts is it's one thing to be told about our condition. It's another to admit and to accept that we are powerless, and definitely accept realizing like we have the condition, not just being told about it, but like accepting it. Like
Yeah.
this is a serious, lethal, fatal condition. And if I don't do something about this, it's gonna kill me. So and you were going into psychosis as a result of it. Like that's a lot of drinking right there. That's a
Oh
lot of
yeah, it was pretty serious.
straight alcohol poison. So even though you wanted to go and drink again, did you?
I did not.
What was the
Uh,
turning point? What made you decide not to?
my family intervened. That was typical scenario. Everybody was at the hospital trying to convince me to go to rehab. Social worker trying to get me to go to rehab, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And I don't know if anybody actually knows this. People that have heard me share at meetings know this, but I don't know if my family knows this. It was a phone call with my grandma. And I just remember telling her, yeah, I'm going to be out of here in a couple of days. I'm going to get home and everything's going to be fine. And my grandma, who's just salt of the earth, Mormon, spiritual, lovely woman, just kind of giggled and said, no, you're not. And I went, fuck. I think I'm going to do this rehab thing that everybody's telling me that I'm going to do. And it wasn't a force. It was just, that's what grandma thought I should do. So I better do it. That's my recollection of it.
So wait, you just mentioned she's Mormon. Grandma was
Yeah,
Mormon.
yeah.
Okay, does that mean you grew up Mormon too?
Until I was about 12, yes.
And then you were kind of exonerated from the church as far as like a Jack Mormon, like you're because you drink, like this is unacceptable in our.
It was more it didn't have anything to do with drinking or alcohol. I was just kind of the best I can remember is I remember talking to my mom just and we had this conversation where like this just isn't for me anymore.
Mhm.
Of course my grandma wanted everybody in the Mormon church, but my mom understood that that was not my path.
Okay, I mean I grew up in Utah, so I'm
Oh, there you go. My grandma's actually from Utah.
right. I was surrounded
Yeah.
by Mormons. Yeah. So you weren't going on any mission.
No, I did not make it that far.
Yes. All right.
I would not have been a good representation of the Mormon church.
I understand. Well, at least she was instrumental in saying one simple thing to you, which just made you, which was like the thing that switched you from wanting to go back out to drink. And so, was you go to treatment after that?
I did. I went from the. I agreed to go to treatment in the hospital, and my family knew nothing about treatment either, so we kind of went off what the social worker had recommended. And it just happened to be Warm Springs.
Well, Warm
Uh,
Springs is, yeah, I know what Warm Springs does.
yeah, anybody that's been around for a while remembers Warm Springs.
Hmm.
And I remember there wasn't a bed there, and my sister actually worked for an area representative, and she got me a bed there, but I had a 2 week wait. I think it was 2 weeks.
Warm
Um,
Springs is kind of a county bed, sort of to the equivalency of Acton, if I'm not mistaken.
it's the sister program for Acton. I initially was able to get into Acton, and when I did my pre-admission intake, they asked me, and this is very important. They asked me if I wanted to go to the co-ed treatment center or the all men treatment center. Acton was the co-ed, Warm Springs was the all men, and I thought about it for a minute, and I just something said go to the all men program, dude, and I did. And that was probably very pivotal in my recovery. Uh,
I've I've been sober 15 years next month, and I know that in my early recovery, being that I got sober in Orange County, but I had a lot of mentors that were from LA. A lot of them were products of Acton and Warm Springs. That I used to
mhm.
hear those names a lot more in the early 2000s. Um, I think they're still there. I think those programs are still there. But from my understanding, they're basically no nonsense uh, county beds where was there counselors,
There were a few, yeah,
therapists?
no,
So it wasn't that type of treatment where you're receiving therapy or anything like that. It's basically you're here, you're getting cleaned up. If there's a waiting list for a bed, that means that you're going to cherish your bed because
mhm.
other people will want it if you don't want it, and they're not there to try to keep you there for your insurance policy or for like a
Yeah,
large amount of money that you're paying. Like if you don't want to be here, go right.
precisely. It was the kind of place we had. Two of the counselors are really important to me still. I talk to them from time to time if I get the chance. But there was one counselor there. I won't say his name, but he would literally walk through. We're talking. We had 5 barracks with 20 bunk bed racks in each one. So there's 40 guys in a room.
Right.
No stalls in the bathrooms, just toilets. It was a Prop 36 joint. Most of the people there were there in lieu of doing time.
Right.
I think there were 4 of us that really wanted to get sober, and when we left, went to meetings. But this is the kind of joint it was. Mike would walk into the barracks, and if you weren't sitting there with a big book, he would walk through. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead, and he meant it. We called him MacArthur Park Mike, and you can kind of figure out why. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a rugged dude,
Hmm.
and that's the kind of place it was. I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen, volunteering in the kitchen, and then it was groups, lunch, groups, dinner, H&I, 7 days a week for 4 months.
And what were the groups like? Was it relapse prevention? Was it
It was
core
all
group?
CBT and 12-step stuff.
Okay.
A lot of relapse prevention, not a lot of skills based stuff, not a lot of learning going on.
Hmm.
A lot of it was just it was
Straight up, just straight up groups like to where
yeah,
you're here for recovery or you're here for the wrong reasons, basically.
yeah. And you have a cinnamon roll on your lap. Get out of my group. You're done.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there do those places make people write words or not like some of the more structured sober livings that are in LA and Orange County, right?
No, it's not like that. You would only have to write words if you got in trouble and you were going to get kicked out and wanted to stay. You would have to write the administrator a letter. Other than that, it was more work.
Okay. And then how long did you stay at Warm Springs?
4 months.
And then did they ever take you guys to meetings?
No, we had H&I. The only time that we left property was if you got hurt.
Hmm.
I hurt my shoulder. I went to Olive View Hospital, which was a fucking treat. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
And then all of the good clients got to go on The Price is Right, which was also an interesting treat. Those were the only 2 times I left in 4 months. It was a trip, dude.
Oh, what a trip.
We all got off of the Greyhound in the middle of I think it was right in the middle of Hollywood at CBS Studios, and we all just jumped down, get in a squat position. We're starting to roll our cigarettes so that we can smoke before we go in. It was kind of a trip.
Imagine that. Imagine, did any of them win?
One of them won, and yes, he AMA'd.
Of course he AMA'd.
Yeah,
He was being enticed.
yeah,
Oh my God. That is such a trip. I said,
yeah.
whoa, what a reward.
Yeah,
I,
I remember we were all making fun of him because he didn't realize he had to pay taxes and that he wasn't going to get it when he walked out the door. So right when we got back to the treatment center, which is like 13 miles up in the mountains,
uh-huh.
he figured out a way to get out of there. He bounced and he was calling 3 weeks later trying to get in because he still hadn't gotten his guitar and his amp. And when he did, he was going to have to pay taxes on it.
Well, that would be a fun episode to watch, just seeing like
Yeah.
these dudes that are straight out of prison that are in rehab,
Yeah.
are coming down, like total fillers. Like just put them over there in the crowd, and maybe
That's
one of them.
exactly what it was. When
Yeah.
the producers come up and they interview you in line, it was like they did like 3 of us. Oh, you're from treatment, and then they just skipped the next 30 dudes
Right.
and just went on down the line.
I actually went on the show one time, but nobody was about to like call up Pejman Olagamanda. They wanted the Mike Bradshaws, the easy names,
Right.
not
Of
like
course.
long ass Persian name. So okay, so once you're out of Warm Springs, what'd you do with your life?
Nothing for a long time. It's kind of important to note that it was a 3-month program, and I wrote a letter begging to stay for another month because I was terrified.
I understand.
So when I left there, I did what all of the H&I panelists told me to do, which was go find a home group, go find a sponsor, and don't forget the world doesn't owe you anything. And that was kind of it. You know, I left and I stayed on mommy's couch because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was at a meeting that ended up becoming my home group. And this dude literally walked up to me and was like, "You need a sober living." And I was like, I do. He was like, "Yeah, you do." So he said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow night, get your stuff." I don't know how he knew that or how it happened. I think it was just kind of a thing that they did there. And he scooped me up, and I was in a sober living that was not much nicer than my treatment center. And
I understand. Was this in the
with a
valley?
bunch of scary dudes? Yeah, it was like dead center, right in the middle of the valley.
And question for you, Mike, like being in fear of leaving and asking to stay an extra month in treatment, but then coming out in this time, do you think in your mind that you had made up your mind that you don't want to drink anymore? What had you made that decision yet, or were you still unstable?
I had made the decision that if I were to drink again, I would be actively choosing to slowly end my life, and that I did not want to do that.
And how old you were 35 at this time, 34, 35 years old?
I was still 34 when I left. Yeah, when I left treatment.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't remember a moment where I ever dove in either. I remember a moment about a month and a half into rehab. Excuse me. And I always tell everybody I caught alcoholism. There was a moment where I went, okay, everything might be okay from here on out.
How old are you now?
Know how. Oh God, come on, dude. I'm 48.
We're about the same age. I'm going to be 51 next month. But okay, so you've been sober, what, 14, 15 years?
13.
13. And how long did you stay in sober living? Were they taking you to meetings, or were you going to meetings regularly then too?
I was there for about 9 months, and we literally went to 3 meetings a day, Monday through Friday, and 2 on Saturday and Sunday.
And were you working?
No.
How are you paying for sober living?
I did my sober living manager's homework. No joke. I had some money left over, some disability left over, but the last few months I was writing his papers for him in school. It was good spiritual stuff. I hope he's watching this. I won't say his name, but I hope he's watching it. He was actually super important because he made sure that we were at the 7 a.m. Valley Club and then the noon Moore Park meeting and then a nice fun speaker meeting 5 nights a week.
Love the Moore Park meeting. I love all the Valley meetings. Dickens,
Yeah.
all that. Okay, so then you stayed there, and he was pretty much hooking you up, like just helping you out to have a place to stay sober, getting you to meetings. You guys had a fair exchange, a little barter system, and then afterwards, you then moved out of sober living and got your own place, and were just kind of plugged into the community. Were you like very
I
active?
was I was very, very active. I did H&I for the first year religiously. I
Mhm.
had my own panel. I actually went back to Warm Springs on H&I panels, and I did the work there. I mean, I
That's
was the guy that
awesome.
I was the
That's
guy that did the Pink Motel out in Silmar. Just I would go to that dust ward right across the street. As long as I was talking,
Mhm.
I was good. So I
Yeah.
was really active.
For those that don't know what H&I is, when I first heard H&I when I was locked up, I thought it stood for homies and inmates. It's actually it's hospitals and institutions. It's for the people that are less fortunate. You bring a message to them, whether they're in detoxes or they're in rehabs or they're incarcerated. People that are active members of a 12-step community will come and share their experience, strength, and hope with them to help them. And I think it's remarkable that you went back to Warm Springs, the place where you got sober and you were able to carry a message. I've done the same thing when I was locked up in juvie. I found myself in the exact same unit when I got sober, sharing my experience, strength, and hope with these youngsters that looked a lot like me in their
Yep.
county blues, sitting there listening to the message. So I think that's a very powerful thing to do. And it helps you stay sober. I mean, it's really like you're being a service to the less fortunate. So good job on that. I love that.
Thank
Touches
you.
my heart to hear that. Now, um, it's my understanding that for the next few years you worked in some treatment settings. Tell us about sober college. I've heard. I know that some of my friends that work over at Interactions
hmm
were former employees of sober college, and I've heard good things. Like, isn't that like it was a rehab that was over in the valley, correct?
It was in Woodland Hills, and those people you're speaking of are actually my mentors. Um, all of them, actually. I know all of the ones you're speaking of, and
They're good people.
I just saw one of them the other day, and I always tell her how important she was to my life.
I think I know exactly who you mean. She's a great lady. I should get her on here too.
Oh God, you really should. It
Yes.
wouldn't hurt to get the guy with the mullet on here either.
Yes, I think I know who he is too.
Yeah, both of them. She was the clinical director, and he was the program director when I started there. So how that happened was I was in sober living. I realized I was doing nothing but Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
And that had kind of become in my life, which was awesome. But I wanted to go to school, and I wasn't too far away from Pierce with my sober living. So I decided to take an addiction studies class to learn. I was going to figure out what was wrong with me and fix it, to be honest with you. And I just fell in love with it. And I saw there was a meeting that sober college went to. And I remember seeing all of these kids that looked like they should have just been little punk asses, and they
Mhm.
should have been a terror in the meeting, and they were actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And I started to figure out, hey, they're with a treatment center, and I found out I talked to one of the techs, and I looked it up online, and I was like, this is pretty cool, man. They do trapeze therapy, surf therapy. This is kind of
Trapeze
wild.
therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the trainers from I think it was the Bailey brothers from Barnum and Bailey has a trapeze set up in their backyard where they do training for the studios.
Uh-huh.
But there was a trip, and when I looked into it more, it was like an actual college, and that blew my mind because all I had heard for the last 10, 11 months was don't do anything big in your first year, and I'm trying to figure out how in the hell are people going to college when they get sober.
Right.
So I took a 2 night a week overnight tech job and just absolutely fell in love with it, man. It was the raddest thing in the world to hang out with people. This is the way it was in the beginning, to hang out with people that actually wanted to do better with their lives and just feel like I was a part of that. There was a whole healing cycle there that I fell in love with it. So I just kept going to school, kept working there, and I think I was there for a total of between 5 and 6 years. I had two different stints there. The first one was mostly operations and tech and management, and then I ended up being a men's counselor and a family counselor there. That's when I got into the clinical side of treatment,
Nice.
and it's just amazing place, man.
So, and when you've been around for a while, like you have, and you've worked in these types of settings, and I love that you call them your mentors. I have myself worked in many different places where um, I met some of the best people that I've ever, both going to school and seeing the instructors and teachers that taught us human services, drug and alcohol counseling, just exceptional teachers who really showed us how to present ourselves, how to be good members in society, how to help the addict and the alcoholic, and then on top of that, you if we're involved in the 12-step community, it makes it that much better because we have our own recovery, and by us working our own program and having good recovery, we're able to help out the people that come through these types of places and be alongside the mentors that are just totally filled with wisdom, experience, and so I like the way that you talk about them. Like I get that. I have my own mentors too that just stand out to me because they were in it with their hearts, and they continue to be, and they truly help us become who we are. So down the line, I mean, you ended up working in a few different places. How did you end up at LifeSync? And tell us about LifeSync. What do you do there?
Oh, life sync. I'm gonna have to dance around a little bit and bounce around to kind of get to it. Life sync is owned by Dr. Booth and his brother Steven.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had actually known Dr. Booth before Life sync when I worked at SOBA. He was one of the medical doctors there, so I knew him a little bit. And the best way to do this. Prior to LifeSync, I was running a Wildwood Treatment Center out in Thousand Oaks,
Mm-hmm.
and that was also another doctor-owned and operated facility. It was owned by Dr. Thomas. Loved it there. Didn't have any issues there. Wanted to grow a little bit, and I had known Natalia for quite some time,
Mm-hmm.
and she ended up down the line marrying Dr. Booth. But at the time, she was dating Dr. Booth. And he was looking for a program director, and she said, "You need to call Mike Bradshaw." And I went and interviewed with him and his brother, and there was something about, it's going to sound so cheesy, but I'm going to say it anyway. There was something about that place. And I remember one of the things that I said in the interview, and I'm pretty sure I was trying to blow it up because I wanted to grow, but I'm also terrified of growth. And I remember saying, this is going to be my last treatment job. If it's 2 weeks, that's cool. If I retire here, even better. But this is my last job in treatment. And for some reason, that didn't scare them. And it didn't even put them off. And that it was just a relationship that went from there. We talked treatment philosophy, which we all agreed on immediately. And that's a lot of where LifeSync is today. It's about love. It's about acceptance. It's about the lack of judgment, because we know the shit that people go through before they even get to our doors.
Yes.
So we talked about a lot of that. We talked about, and a big thing for us, we talked about relapse, and what we do with patients when they relapse and how we treat them, and everything just lined up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I left the interview and went, I blew it. They're never going to call me again. They offered me the job, and I jumped at it. And I've been there for just over 4 years now.
Dude, I think that you're your own worst critic. Like you're a
What do you
valid. That's part of the alcoholic condition, I believe. Perhaps.
Exactly.
They're very lucky to have you. I believe there's a reason they've kept you this long. You're pretty much you're the backbone of the place, from what I know. Natalia, I know her personally. Dr. Booth, I've met him too. I've come out and seen the facility. I've been there a couple of times, and I really, really enjoy. Not just because it has a nice view, but I enjoy what goes on there clinically. I like that. I like the fact that it's doctor owned and that he's hands on within the facility, not just acting as a doctor, but acting as a person that's there that cares about his clients. I mean, from what I remember, you had told me that I don't know if it's him that plays the guitar or would go and like
Yeah.
sit alongside the clients that might be going through it and just being there for them and like connecting with them more on a cellular level rather than just being some doctor that you see that just walks through and comes and does his doctor commitments and then takes off. No, he's like really invested in helping the clients firsthand, and I know that you are too. And Natalia, that goes without saying. She's just a great lady all around. I'm going to actually, like I told you before we even did the podcast, I want to have her on here. She's got a hell of a fucking story. I'm talking like,
Oh yeah, she does.
I had lunch with her one day, and what the stuff that she told me, I was like, oh my god, like we need to get you on there. So that'll be coming up into the summer, but I'm proud of you. Like I'm happy to have a friend like you. It's a trip like when you meet somebody a few times and you only know like surface level friendship or acquaintance. Like I didn't know much about you. I just knew like you're basically not just a good man in a professional setting, but like in our recovery community. Like you've been around, you stay around, you help a lot of people, and you're very humble. You're like a gentle giant, just a good dude that I. And when I come there, like even when I've come to visit you guys at LifeSync, you're welcoming, but like you're still making sure like day to day operations are in order and intact, and that's a plus. That's like a good character trait. The fact that you really care about where you work, and I'm happy that it's lasted longer than 2 weeks and you didn't have to retire because the treatment world is definitely lucky to have you. You're experienced, you're a good man, and that's one of the reasons like you stood out to me. Then I wanted to have you on here because sometimes like you can just vibe with somebody's recovery without really knowing too much about them, and I could tell that about you. I could just tell like this guy's a good guy right here, and keep doing what you're doing, man. It's been good to hear from you. It's good to hear this story. I think that you give a lot of people a lot of hope. I can't help but think like if somebody was to, let's say, Google the alcoholic condition and find us on YouTube and see this episode to see how you what you went through, what you did to yourself, how you got sober, how you transformed, and how you got on the other end of this. And to the point where now you've made it your way of living to be able to be of maximum service to people and helping them and doing whatever you can to make sure that they too can get their lives back.
That was really uncomfortable, but I appreciate all of it.
That's because your own worst critic still. But I appreciate you, Mike. Like truly, I'm gonna come up and visit you guys again. So I'll set something up with you. But I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to you and having you on today. And I hope that this can help somebody. I think it helped a lot of people. So again, thanks for coming to the corner. And I'll be calling you soon, buddy.
All right, thanks, brother. Thanks for having me, Pej.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.